All right, I'll just for simplicity, Michelle, because I have it in front of me. I can call the Willington Board of Finance Education, Willington Board of Education Finance Committee to order. It's May 26, 4 p.m. We have two guests with us from Novus to help us through a few things. Carl Fazina and Kevin Eichart, two of our Novus pros. And so the agenda that we have on today, there's 4 items under the funding for technology: staff laptops, migration to Google, cybersecurity upgrade, and then the center school cameras. And so what I will do is I'll just jump in and start sharing my screen if that works for all of you.
Are we limited to talking about funding for technology, or can I make a motion to add funding for security to the list?
If it falls under the cameras because it's considered to be a special meeting, you can speak under that. But if it's not under, if it's totally separate, you can't add an agenda item to this agenda. But you could ask to have it added to the regular board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the first thing here is the laptop. So I asked Kevin to get some apples to apples quotes for us for new laptops. Right now, our staff laptops are the end of year 4, I believe, Kevin.
Correct.
And we are seeing some degradation. Obviously, they were heavily used during, well, they were heavily used as it is, but really during the COVID at home work that we've done. So he picked up 3 quotes. They're looking to move us to a Dell laptop. All of these are the same laptop models. And the prices came in pretty consistently, but there's definitely one that has significantly better offer than the others. So the 3 that came in were CDW, STS Education, and BlackRock. And so you can see STS came in at 6, and these are outright purchased. Okay. You can see STS came in at $64,780. This is BlackRock. They came in at $61,452. And then the last one came in from CDW at $61,908.84. That CDW one is about $450 more than the least expensive one. However, I'm going to recommend you use this one, and I'll tell you a couple reasons why. Number one, they have an offer on here that the other 2 do not have, and it's the Dell 3-year accidental damage service. That's breakage protection and the extended hardware warranty. And then the second thing this offer has that the other ones don't even provide at all is they have the auto deployment, which really takes Novus out of the picture. Novus would provide CDW with the picture, if I'm correct there, Kevin, and these laptops would come set up. If we don't do the auto deployment, basically what happens is Novus would accept our 55 or whatever laptops in, 54 laptops into the district, and then they would basically have to set up a special project that we would be billed for, or to set them all up. This has it built into this price, and I'm going to be honest with you, for $450 more, it's well worth the breakage and the setup cost, which is why I would recommend this, that you go with this one. Again, same exact laptop, same exact specs. It's just that this CDW offers this auto deployment setup. The other 2 do not offer it. And that CDW built in the 3-year accidental damage service here. So that's my recommendation. Did I miss anything, Kevin, that you want to add to these?
No, that's correct.
Okay. So Michelle and Donna, questions about the staff laptop quotes?
Could you have them stay with the one you've got, the CDW?
Yep.
Because I will tell you, we have a warranty on one of ours, and something happened, and it's well worth, if we're talking $68 a unit, it will, if 2 or 3 units go down, it's more than paid for itself.
100%.
So I'm okay with that, but could you just, you've got the laptop, and just kind of give in layman's terms
Yep.
what each one of those things is?
Yeah, absolutely. I can, Phil, do you want me to go through the list?
Yeah, go for it. So the first one's the laptop. So what's the second thing, Kevin?
Yeah, so the first one is a laptop. The second one is 8 gigabytes of additional memory, which essentially just prolongs the life of the computer, makes it faster, processes things more quickly. The third is a hardware option to install the memory into the device. So line number 2 comes as a physical stick of memory that's separate from the laptop. That's essentially a cost for CDW to install all of that, essentially taking the labor off of Novus to do so.
Yep.
Number 4 is a general hardware extended warranty. Essentially, what that means is if there's any hardware defect with the components themselves, you can get that replaced under warranty. And number 3, so that, sorry, let me repeat. Number 4, that does not cover accidental damage. So essentially, as if a component fails, if a component fails under the expected lifetime, within 3 years, you can replace that. Number 5 is any damage. If a teacher drops it, hinge breaks, something like that, screen break, that can be replaced under warranty. And then the last one, Autopilot advanced deployment. Essentially, if you've ever gotten a brand new laptop yourself before, it kind of, you have a first time setup associated with that. So you have to sign in, install updates, install your programs and stuff like that. So essentially what we do is I'll be working with CDW to create an image containing all the programs that the teachers utilize. So it's the same image across all computers. What they will do is they will go through that first time setup process on all 55 devices. So essentially when they are shipped to the school, we will have to inventory them, potentially assist staff with signing in and running updates one last time, depending on how close to the beginning of the school year they're completed. And essentially that will reduce the large amount of hours necessary to set those up.
Kevin, can you speak to, so I think what Donna, that your comment about the warranty thing is what we're living now. Some of these parts that if we have something breaks now and we have to replace it, or a screen cracks, someone drops something, we start looking at the cost of a new laptop versus the cost for repair and parts. You end up almost always buying a new laptop now because it's just not worth it. And you still have a 4-year-old laptop. That's what you're living now, right, Kevin?
That's correct. And one of the other major benefits I saw under the accidental damage service is what we've noticed in the past is when you have a full fleet of teachers' laptops, you're supporting that hardware across all your staff integrated technologies. So your Promethean boards, any sort of webcams, docking stations, that kind of stuff. So if one of those laptops breaks and they don't happen to have that model anymore, it kind of leads to potential issues with model variants throughout the district. So that essentially protects the district of having the same model supported for all technologies, at least within that 3-year time frame.
Yeah. So again, that's why I think that the big thing and I talked to Kevin about this, I think the additional $450 for the CDW quote is just a no-brainer. That if there's a recommendation to purchase laptops, that you go with CDW just for those, the additional things that you get here with the accidental breakage and the auto deployment. Any other questions, Donna or Michelle?
Makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me. My other question is really more of So we've got 54, I'm assuming 54 laptops out there in the schools with the teachers and that way. Can those be repurposed? It all, I mean, I don't know how useful, useless, if instead of having to just throw them in the garbage or recycle them, if they can be used in the school, if they can't, should we, get off what has to be gotten off and then, sell them or give them to families in the community that don't have something? I don't know if there's a way to, do something positive with what we've got left.
Yeah, Kevin and I talked about that. You want to talk about e-waste, Kevin, and versus
Yeah.
the process of having to wipe everything and then sell or whatnot.
Yeah, so there's a couple components to that. I think with any major deployment, this quote specifically is to replace staff laptops for all certified staff. So regardless, I think we would keep the best of the bunch as far as office loaners, substitute staff, guests, that kind of stuff. From what I've seen walking around the district as far as the physical condition of some of these laptops, unfortunately, this current model that the district has suffered some sort of serious hardware defect where the top left-hand corner, the screws are coming out from the motherboard, effectively damaging the power source. So you see a lot of the teacher laptops in the top left-hand corner are damaged. And unfortunately, when that's the major defect on the grand majority of the laptops affected, you can't do too much in regards to combining them into more laptops, but we'll obviously do our best to do so. Phil and I have discussed about the benefit analysis of distributing potential laptops to the public. I'm not against the idea. A word of caution is two things. I have heard of potential situations where there's some sort of legal risk associated with that, depending on what funding was used to purchase the laptops. If that's an avenue you may want to go, you may want to consult.
Yeah, we can do that.
With that is when you're distributing devices, one of the main services e-waste companies provide is destruction of all data on those hard drives. When you're donating those devices, two of the major considerations is you can either donate the devices without hard drives whatsoever, which would ensure the district not have any issues associated with the labor involved with destroying all that data, which most likely wouldn't be feasible at a large scale for the district to do in-house to donate those. So it's possible you could donate the laptops without hard drives, and then you would rely on the public to install their own hard drives, operating system, that kind of thing.
Kevin, I think what you're referring to is if, for example, the funding used to purchase the equipment is from the State Department of Education and it still has adequate residual value, you're supposed to return it to the state at the end of a grant. However, computers like this that are not, within 2 years in terms of age are considered basically so old that they don't want them back and couldn't resell them easily. So if they were super high end the first time around and had not been, worn to the nub, it might be an issue, but given the age and the condition of the existing laptops, there's not a concern about there being any residual value that the grantor could recoup by getting them.
Right.
I
and
see.
We couldn't, if we were to sell these or give these away, we also would have to remove our Microsoft Office suite on it because it's the Microsoft for Education, the version that we pay for.
Mhm.
So basically, you'd have a laptop with no hard drive and no Microsoft Office. So for some
Well,
people,
that's
that would
really
be
not the purview of the finance committee. We're just looking at whether or not we want to purchase the new ones. What we do with the old ones is a decision to be made on a separate level.
Yeah.
Even if we were to sell them with what we have, we're not going to recoup any money back on them. So it's not going to
Minimal.
impact our decision on which of these 3 vendors to choose.
So would you agree then that CDW would be the recommendation that you would make to the full board?
I feel fine with that. What do you think, Donna?
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if it's got the 3-year warranty on the computer, plus the 3-year accidental, plus the fact that they're going to get it, ready to basically just hand to the, and my understanding is it will be ready, it'll be handed to the teacher, and all they'll have to do is whatever password stuff needs to be done. And
Yeah, it's basically plug and play, maybe a minor update, but basically the idea is plug and play without having to have Novus spend hours of time setting these up.
well, that seems to make the most sense to me also.
Okay. All right, so let me close these other ones and we'll move on. And so we'll do CDW. So the next item here is the migration to Google. And this is it's similar to the process that the town went through. And I mentioned this at last meeting. This would eliminate the outdated server that we have right now. It's and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, this is our mail server.
That's
And,
correct.
this would really significantly impact and improve our security, our overall security, and which is one of the things that we have to do to move towards cyber insurance. Whether you want to do cyber insurance in the future or not, this is just a project. I think Carl's probably sick of me hearing me talk about this project, because he had a beautiful graphic on my whiteboard in my office a while
Remember
ago.
that?
It was pre-COVID. We've been talking about this for a while, and I think this is the right time to do it. So we will eliminate that outdated server, and then it also has the Google Workspace for Education licenses tied to it. So because we have Novus as a contractor already, and I talked to Donna about this, this would just be a task. We wouldn't have to send this out to other groups, which makes sense because Novus has all of our security information. They're a trusted, contractor that we use. We had a wireless drop yesterday, and Kevin made it happen. We came back in about 5 hours. So that's something that we really appreciate the work that they've done. So basically what they do is, this is the project summary that they put into their proposal. It's basically to configure this workspace. The bottom line in really simplistic terms is it moves our email from that kind of Outlook picture, the outdated server that we have, and eliminates that, and it moves everything to Google. And so in the simplest of terms, Kevin, can I say it any easier than that?
That's a pretty concise, accurate way to word that. Yeah.
And can you just speak to, so in this quote, so this is what the quote is. It's for $20,330, and then the licenses are $1,560. The $20,330 is a one-time cost. That is the work that, and it's really, this is about hours, and to do this huge migration, and then to do the cutover. And that FOI reasons, we have to make sure all of this mail is maintained, that it's safe, that we can access it all. So that's a big piece of it. And then the annual is the 1,560, which is a minor piece of this, but this is the education standard, the workspace licenses for students and staff. So you can see that's there. Do you want to run through this, Kevin? So as far as the workspace, the project, and explain what the quantity is. We've talked about this, is some of this is hours, some of this is subscriptions, things like that.
Yeah, I can go through it all right here. So the project management line is just a base fee associated with putting together the whole project, verifying it's completed to the scope of its entirety. The migration software bundle, the quantity of 130, that is a software we use called Migration Wiz, associated per account being moved over to Google Workspace. So that essentially verifies that all mail calendar access is synchronized completely to Google Workspace. Teachers do not lose any of that data and is migrated seamlessly. One of the biggest components with this, as the Board of Education already utilizes Google Workspace as far as teacher Google Classroom, classroom integration, students have Google accounts. That's the core component of their learning resources online. One of the biggest factors with this project is mail and files are not completely in Google Workspace. And there's a lot of security features and configuration setup required to make it a secure environment that are not currently set up because the district's not utilizing it for mail currently. The mailbox migration and mail flow cutover is the time associated with auditing all of those accounts, configuring the licensing, migrating those mailboxes, and verifying that the information pulled over is successful and accurate. The Exchange server decommission is the process to shut down the old mail server as far as migrating mail flow records, which essentially means where your mail is sent and received from. And shutting that down in a way that we can preserve that data for future use as far as deactivated accounts for FOIA requests. There's a two-hour out of scope project work and project contingency, just in the event additional items pop up. Post-migration support, especially with a large transition, staff are moving mail from Outlook on-prem Exchange 2013 into Gmail. So there's a lot of first-time questions and additional time necessary potentially to assist staff in that transition. So we allocated 16 hours post-migration to assist staff to make sure it's a seamless transition on top of our normal managed support hours.
So one of the things that I think that we want to highlight here is that I think there's, without going obviously too far into detail here, but our current setup is actually a security risk. And that's the bottom line, from my opinion, from my understanding of this. One of the reasons we want to go to this migration to Google is to get rid of the server, the Exchange server, which is known to be one of the avenues people can access your data. And so that's one of the things why the town has already done this process, and why I'm bringing it to you and recommending that you have Novus do this for the Board of Ed side as well. Questions about this project? I can't see you, Donna, so if you, I'm not.
I raised my hand. I was trying to, I didn't want to interrupt Michelle if she had a question. So you said the town already did this?
Yeah, Kevin, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so the town had a similar project, but had different components associated with it. So previously, the Board of Education and Town of Willington coexisted on the same domain, which is not best practice. At some point, the town employees migrated off the willingtonct.org domain to their own domain, and during that process, recreating their user accounts and migrating their data, we moved them to Office 365, which removes them from that on-premises Exchange 2013.
So we will be on a different domain than the town of Willington.
Correct. That's actually already occurred. But
Okay.
yes, that's
And
correct.
then we will continue to, I didn't know if when we migrated, we'd be back with them, but it makes sense to have it separate in case there's a breach on one, there's not a breach on all. And that way, Phil, how does this quote compare to what the town paid for this similar, but not exactly the same services?
I think theirs was more, but it depends on what because we're not going, doing all the same level of work that they're doing, this is actually cheaper, I think, than what the town paid. But we also have an additional cybersecurity portion that I don't think, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, that the town has done.
That's correct.
So that'll be the next part of this that we would need to do as well. I think they did some of the check boxes on the town side as part of their project. This is just the migration for us.
Correct.
I think they were closer to 30, Kevin. Am I correct about that?
I don't actually recall that initial project cost, but I'm sure we could look that up.
Carl, do you know that?
Not off the top of my, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can. All right, not off the top of my head, but I can look it up right now.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Donna.
I was gonna say, the other question I have, and this is just a personal pet peeve, will there be spell check on the emails? There isn't spell check on, or if there is, I can't find the button, and I love to spell check my emails.
Spell check in Gmail. I believe it is a feature built in, but if not, we can find a solution for you.
I don't need a special solution. I just thought that. Spell check.
Yeah, I believe Gmail by default does have an option to spell check.
You know, I'm
Maybe
actually
just
looking
set
at
up
it.
across the administrative level, but it is doable because we have it for work.
So I'm looking at the project right now. It looks like the total included Microsoft 365 licenses. And so the project was actually roughly the same size. It was just under $18,000. And it looks like the hours for it, the biggest piece of hours was workstation preparation and configuration. So going out to physically working with each of the workstations. The email migration was significantly smaller because the staff is significantly smaller. So there's less email to migrate. And then the other piece that was significant in terms of their proposal was the configuration of Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, which are file sharing, file storage, and collaboration components. And that represented about 32 hours.
And they don't get that, Carl. They don't get the Google for Education unlimited storage that we get, right? That's why we need those things.
Yeah, they have so basically, we have clients with Google environments, we have clients with Microsoft environments. For education, the Google environment is more cost effective. They have preferential pricing for education, not so much for municipalities or nonprofits, et cetera. And so as a result, if you're trying to work and get the most out of a license, the most out of it, best security, most features, most capability, Google in education works the best. And if it's not education, Microsoft probably has the best bang for the buck as far as security and features and so on. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about this migration project? And we do have funds to do this, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's something that it makes sense to make it safer all around. I can tell you, we've been really happy with Google once we made the change. We're a small shop, obviously, and nothing like this, but I was a little worried about the outages because, sometimes, parts of Google go down, but it's really not been a problem. So.
Excellent.
Okay, so if you're good, I'll keep going.
Okay,
Okay, so then this was, we talked about that. So the next item on the agenda is the cybersecurity upgrade. This is like the next step of this process. So we have basically, Kevin went out and got some information. This is one of the things that's constantly changing for every, doesn't matter what your field is. It's constantly changing. They're trying to constantly upgrade your security. The checklist that we'll call it as of today has a certain number of things in it. And this proposal is what would meet the checklist as of today. There could be
Right.
things right a month down the road that happen, and now there's a new thing that we have to protect from, and that's just the way cybersecurity and how fast this business moves, that we have to consider. But the idea here is, as of today, that if you complete this proposal, is that we believe that we would be eligible for cyber insurance at that point in time, because we
Correct.
would have checked the boxes that we need to check as of today. This does not include the price of cyber insurance. It just makes us eligible. Last time we tried to do it, they wouldn't even look at us. You know, so there's things that this would put into place that would check those boxes, and each of the items would be checked to allow us to be eligible. And again, this would be done by Novus because it's all of our internal stuff. The good thing about this is Kevin looked at some of the subscriptions we have right now, and believes that if we complete this, we would be able to reduce about 6,000 a year or in annual subscription fees. There are subscription fees associated with this, and I'm going to show you kind of the big picture. This first section, and I'm just going to do the overall, and then we'll go back and show you. The first section is really the project. The project itself is $10,100. Okay, that's the kind of cybersecurity upgrade, the things that we need to put into place. The second part is the annual subscription fees. Now, this is broken down into monthly. What I'll tell you is it's about an annual subscription fee of $21,150. That is applied to maintain the level of security to continue to be eligible for cyber insurance. That's and to keep your security there. The other piece of this is there is a one-time cost for this this called IDRAC 9 piece. It's a perpetual license as long as you have it, so it's a one-time fee of $249.70. So the overall cost on the front end of this is $31,499.70. And then you would have an annual of approximately $21,000. The $31,000 is paying for that, part of that $21,000 in the first year. Okay, does that make sense? So I'm just going to go back to the what the actual this remediation project is, Kevin, and if you want to walk through again what's in this, or Carl, I'm not sure who takes this one, what the actual $10,000 buys, and then we can go into the subscription portion second.
Yeah, I can start, and then if there's any questions, and then Carl, once we get to the subscriptions, if you'd like to talk about that. So
Wait a second, Kevin. Before
Yeah.
we start, Phil, could you just shrink the page a little instead of it being 110%, so we can just see like the whole page at once? Will that work?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
yeah, so going through this first page here in regards to the remediation project, essentially what I did is I worked with Jake Duckworth, the KERMA representative for Willington, and essentially what they did is gave us a list of about 10 or 12 high-level overview items, and essentially said this is what they're seeing from the cybersecurity insurance providers as what they require. And what I did is I audited the Willington Board of Education's environment and directly applied its current environment to those specific that specific list provided to me. So everything you see here is in relation to a direct item on that checklist. A couple things is there were some specific security policies in place that need to be configured. That would be line number 2, the audit current security practices, make adjustments towards best practices. The configuration of least privilege access to personally identifiable information is some consulting time that would require sitting down with administration to identify where that data is currently stored, as well as make adjustments to secure that moving forward. Some of the other components associated are enrolling the devices into Microsoft Intune. That's essentially a cloud-based management of Windows devices that provides us the opportunity to do 2 things directly applicable to the cybersecurity project, which is configuring Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is a managed option available to the education licensing for the Board of Education that is provided free with their licensing. We're using that to remove the current ESET security services licensing, which should save us part of that subscription fee that Phil was discussing. It also, the enrolling devices into Intune component, not described there, but also provides us the opportunity to encrypt drives through BitLocker, which is a requirement on that sheet. Deployment of Huntress. Huntress is a managed endpoint detection and response antivirus product, which is also, it's essentially working in conjunction with Microsoft Defender to fulfill that cybersecurity insurance requirement of having an EDR product in place. And then same thing as the previous quote, just 2 hours for out of scope work and project contingency.
All right, and I'll talk a little bit about the recurring services, the recurring fees. So there's for 385, so that's for the Chromebooks, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so basically for 10 months out of the year, while students are using the Chromebooks, there is a monitoring and response solution that will be in place with a security operations center. So if there are certain indicators, things that are happening, bad guys trying to get in or mess with the Chromebooks, it will trigger an automated response, which during certain months will actually be reviewed by a security operations center who either the electronic component of it will automatically shut down access to the network from the Chromebook based on certain activities. And then for other types of activities, it will actually send the message for action to the security operations center, and a person would manually review and say, okay, it didn't elevate to the level of automatically shutting the Chromebook access off to protect the network, but this is a little funny or a little suspicious. Let me dive into this a little bit more. So it's a very, very powerful and essential these days capability that is roughly $30 per device for that 10-month period.
Carl, a quick note for
Sure.
the Google monitoring and response. So one of the components is that Chromebook monitoring. However, it also applies to every Google service. So that applies to all Google accounts,
Right.
not exactly just the Chromebook access itself,
Right.
but it'll also monitor for suspicious logins, password attempts, sign-in attempts, that kind of stuff from all staff and student Google accounts.
Yep, great point. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, absolutely. And that's critical because obviously, any suspicious activity across any of the platform needs to be monitored and dealt with. So, and then the last piece there, because there's another, small out of scope contingency, but the last piece is the know before licensing. So know before is security awareness training, and it's the industry leader in that. It is a service that we recommend for all of our clients. We have a program actually regionally where we provide the service. The idea is that when you have all of your systems locked down, that's great. It's wonderful. You have your firewall, you have, all of your technological security precautions. But if your staff aren't regularly trained in the latest exploitation techniques and resistance techniques, then what invariably happens is they get tricked into providing either their password or account access or buying the gift cards or whatever, and then they are the vulnerability. So the challenge is, originally folks used to say, all right, well, yeah, people are a potential vulnerability and their lack of awareness and lack of training. So let's splurge, let's get some Dunkin' Donuts coffee and some donuts and let's train everybody and scare them good. And people would do that. And everybody would leave and say, wow, that was really scary. I'm never going to go on the internet again. And then 3 days later, they, back to whatever habits they had. And, we've seen it all. Obviously, some of us have, done some of that stuff. So what's really powerful about Know Before is the way that it works is it's a security awareness training program. And it sends out, first of all, it is a program, meaning it is configured in conjunction with Steve, with Phil and Erica. They get together with Kevin and they develop a program that's specifically tailored for the district. And so they go through and they say, okay, how often do we want to test people? And then if we test people and our staff fails, what kind of training or what are we going to require them to do to sort of carrot stick, educate them as well as maybe, show them that they shouldn't have done that. And what does that program even look like? And so they did develop that, and then it's an automated training program. So once it's developed, once it's deployed, the program will send out phishing emails, fake phishing emails. And, it could say something like your UPS package is going to be delayed. Please click here, track it. And if someone should click on that, put in their credentials or interact with the email, it takes them to a screen and says, okay, the good news is this was not a real phishing exploitation. The bad news is now you have to do some training and, here's what you messed up. You might've been fooled by the fact that, this email had a sense of urgency, or this email came from an account that looks like your account of your superintendent, but obviously isn't, and so on and so forth. And what's great is because, again, it's a program, it's done over time, it's managed, and there's stats, and you can actually see how the district is doing. And you can see the improvement over time. And what's really interesting is Know Before has stats of the impact that their program has. And at the time, this is a couple of years ago, they had 9 million tests that they had done. And the failure rate on the first test, the click failure rate, so somebody getting that email and going, oh, I better put my password in, was 30% across those 9 million tests. Now it only takes one per organization, but it was 30%. After 1 year of security awareness training with Know Before, they were able to get that down to, I think 1% is the stat, which is still not great. That could still be, the straw that broke the camel's back or what have you, but it's so much better. It's so much a safer environment. And that's really the only effective way to supplement security on the technology side is with users who understand what they should and should not be doing, feel responsible and accountable. And when all else fails, you make them take a 5-minute training or video as a punishment. And they go, all right, I'm not going to fall for that again. And the last factor, the thing that really works, is a little bit of peer-to-peer humiliation. You know, when you walk behind somebody and you see that they're taking the test and you go, what, did you fall for that? You know, and it's like, oh yes, they got me. So that's the other component that really does, it's the stocks model of crime and punishment. It you know, a little bit of humiliation goes a long way. And obviously if people feel responsible and if they're educated, they won't make the same mistakes again and again, in theory.
It's also worth mentioning that while it is a best practice for security awareness training, that was also directly tied to that list that Jake provided me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
I
the
have a
insurance
couple of-
companies have put it in now as a requirement. So
I have a couple of questions about that. Do we think there's 120 computers or 120 users? Where'd the
The
120 come from?
that was users.
users.
So that's total email addresses and staff.
That seems pretty high, given our staff numbers.
No. Paras, teachers, Board of Ed, it's all of our group.
Substitutes, so it's anybody who comes into the system?
It's anybody with a Board of Ed email address.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody that has access to the system is interacting with it, is a potential threat vector.
I'm chuckling, Michelle, because pre-Novus, that was probably 275.
Yeah, unfortunately, when I
We
did
never cleaned
account,
that out. Got it.
I have done the account cleanup, fortunately, but there were quite a few either generic accounts where multiple people were signing in, accounts that have been active since when I audited them. I asked who this user was, and that person hasn't been here since 2006. That kind of
We have a good
thing.
list. We
Got
have
it.
a good list.
Okay. But it includes everybody who's got access to the system, so it's not just staff. Okay. So I love the know before idea of kind of a hidden test, putting that out there. I think that's quite ingenious. I have to say, I'm not happy with the way you quoted the prices on here, because you've got a monthly, you've got an annual, and you've got a 10 months. I realize there's no good way to put that in a number to come up with that 172, but your numbers don't add up, because the $200 monthly for the 1666A, you've got a decimal point in the wrong place there. You've got 4 digits after the comma. Unless that's $1.67.
It is.
It is. It's 1.6667
It's
per.
$1.67.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
month.
So it's actually because it did the math. It's literally 67 thousandths of a, or 67 hundredths of a penny even. So it's going too far out. We're calculating for
So it's basically $20 a year per person.
that is correct. That is correct. Yeah,
Okay.
without that
Got it.
awful $1.6667.
Right. And the other one is $5 a month. So that's the other piece for the 600.
Correct. That's the
Um,
the EDR, the Security
Right.
Operations Center stuff.
But then the Chromebooks, nobody uses the Chromebooks over the summer, Phil?
So, and Kevin, you can speak to this, but from what I understand, we're paying for 10 months. They're still monitored, and it's not that the billing is done over those other 2 months. It's typically that you're billing, and this is kind of like they follow the school calendar type billing. It's just how it's done. That's why when I shared the price with you, the $31,499, it's really that you're paying a 1-year subscription of $21,150. That's why Novus, I think, does us a favor. And sometimes you'll see fees where it's like, no, it's an upfront annual cost of this, or we can build it into your bill. what I'm suggesting right now for this is when this goes in front of the board, that you pay for the full year. You pay the $31,499, you approve the year. After that, I might say, hey Novus, if we're still going to be doing this and we need to add it, can we add this to our monthly bill? Does that make sense?
Right, because we get billed from Novus monthly,
Correct.
and this is just a way to divide it up.
Right.
I don't think this helps us to take this to the board in this format. If it's going to be $21,000 a year, say it's going to be $21,000 a year. We only look at annual budgets. We don't look at monthly budgets. So it's not going to, I know that makes it seem higher. I think it helps to see the unit price, that it's, you know, $30 a year for this, $25 a year for that, $20 a year for this. But for those monthly fees, that feels like you're trying to, you know, fit apples and oranges together.
Yeah.
One's a one time, and then the other annual is recurring, but make them both annual.
My suggestion is too, that you don't even have to put this document in front of the board. I think the finance committee's job is to look at it and understand it and then go, okay, we support this move. We look to the quote. We, you know, we understand that the cost is 31,000. We want to tell you that after we would be paying for 1 year, after that, there is an annual subscription of around $21,000.
Okay.
That would then eliminate the 6,000 that we currently have right now. That's how I would present it. And really with the purpose of, why are we doing the cybersecurity upgrade? Really the purpose is to do the check boxes that Kerma has given us, Jake Duckworth, so that we're eligible for cyber insurance. Because some of this stuff, when we start getting into hours and things at the full board level, doesn't make sense. It makes sense at the finance committee level, so you understand what the project is, that you support the project, and that you're making the recommendation to do the work. Does that make sense?
It does. So I have one more question about both this and the previous one in terms of this type of a contract with an hourly estimate. What happens if you bump into something and it takes you twice as much time? Is this a one-time contract you're going to do at this cost no matter what? Or is this, if it takes a lot less because it goes a lot faster than you think, do we save money? What's the flexibility on this?
Typically it's time, most of the agreements are time and materials, and the vast majority of agreements that are time and materials are at or slightly under, with very rare exceptions where they go slightly over. And in the instances where they go massively over, it's bad and it's legendary and everybody in the company knows about it. And it's like, we can't possibly, we can't possibly charge the client for it because we didn't tell them it was going bad. So then it's like, well, what's wrong with us? And it's, so it doesn't happen very often. And if it does happen, I mean, it's very memorable in my mind. I can,
it goes back to that peer shaming.
yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. Well, I mean, you know, we've done a lot of this for long enough that we slice and dice it by, you know, factors in the environment, personalities, skills and capabilities of the team that's doing it, all of that. And then we give a number that's should be a comfortable number. And then sometimes what happens is the team that's working on it puts in extra time and they don't bill for it or whatever, because they also want to come in under.
So we also balance. I mean, you know, we have a good relationship with Novus. And so, you know, if Kevin needs to come in on a Saturday to do something, he'll adjust his hours so that he's not in, or he, you know, the follow that number of hours he's someplace else. Or if there's an emergency in Columbia where they also work, he's telling me, hey, we're still supported, but there's an adjustment of those hours to make sure we get our hours of service, and so does Columbia. Sometimes it's project hours like this, like things where we go over, that they just cover it within their hours. Or they'll say, look, if there's no way we can do our current work. It's just communication, and it's worked out very well for you know, what's been expected for the work.
I just wanted to be clear in case we were going to the board that there was no chance that it's going to go over this amount. I guess I should have put the question this way. Should somebody have screwed up with the estimate and it really takes 3 times the amount of time you have budgeted here, Phil's not going to come back to us and say, well, we really need another $40,000.
No, Carl's gonna stand in front of the notice office with a specific shirt
That's
that
right.
says I messed up.
And
That's
is
right.
his head half shaved on one
Yeah.
side? Or, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and the only time we ever have to go back for anything
Mhm.
is not on the project, but is on a different like it would always be on a different project. And it's never like all right, well, we need to, so an example is if in the process of, if there was a project to like deploy a bunch of PCs and we're going to deploy those PCs, and then somebody goes in the closet where, the power modules are whatever, and then they find like 30 other PCs that nobody knew about. It's like, well, that's different than the scope of the original project.
Right.
Should we do them now? Should we do them later? That's the kind of stuff that happens, but it's never really the project itself that explodes. Although I will say with application development or custom application development, that is an area where it is literally possible to spend, on what you think is a $10,000 project with requirements and things changing, you could spend an infinite amount of money. So that is an area where people have to really be careful. That is where I do not say like, oh, don't worry about it. Whatever you want is fine. That's like, okay, we need to have a very strict understanding of what the wireframe is, what the specs are, what the functionality is going to be coming out of it. And then it's like this amount of hours, and we have to be really careful about that. So that's a different kind of thing. There's only so astray an infrastructure project will go. Whereas I will caution, if we are dealing with an application development project ever, you will not hear me make that sort of blanket like, don't worry about it. It's
That's not
different.
this project.
No,
That's
that is
this
not
project.
this project. Correct. Which tells
then-
you how solid this project is, that I am able to point to that other type of project and say, all right, we should all, be more careful with that for sure.
Any other questions about the cybersecurity remediation portion of the?
Yes, I do. And I think you already answered one of my questions. There is monitoring during the summer so that if a teacher is working on lessons or a student is working on their computer, that's
Correct.
The other thing is, do we have a written policy so that the teachers know that their work computer is just to be used for work? Because if they have their computer, their laptop at home, and they decide to go on a shopping network site or look at news or whatever they're doing that's not directly related to their job, or let their kids on the computer, we could end up being exposed to things that we shouldn't be. So I want to make sure that there was some sort of policy in place that just isn't supposed to happen. If they choose to violate the policy, we won't know unless something goes wrong. But
There's
I
an
think-
acceptable use policy for staff and students, and the staff is in the handbook and the students is in the handbook. The other thing about the laptops and the technology is they're locked down. So, even I can't just go in and download a new program. You need Novus permission to do that. And I think that's a really important security feature. If they want something to download, because typically it's in downloads and things like that. Sometimes it's in links and that they're surfing, but those things are why I think the training is really important as part of that process as well.
Right. Yeah. So we always start with the idea that there are certain end goals that you want to have clear understanding of the policies and procedures so that everyone's on the same page, and you want to make sure that on a recurring basis there's exposure to that, and it is top down. Phil, that is your job and Erica's job on the town side to create that environment. And then what we do as IT is we make sure that we lock down what we lock down in line with that. We provide access so that people can do their jobs without feeling like they can't move or breathe. And we also just all have to be cognizant of opportunities to enhance people's access and the usability of systems without compromising the security. Because if you don't let people work and let students student, what happens is they are very smart, they're very clever, they will ultimately eventually find a workaround that will not be ideal for us or for you. So
I just want to put a note that I have to leave for the chiropractor at 20 after 5, at which point I'd have to move to the phone Zoom and not just listen in. So if there's anything else we have to look at, if we can cover
Yeah.
that while I'm still on video, that would be
I
great.
think the last thing will be quick. Any other comments about the cybersecurity piece, Donna?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. I think you guys are all set then. Thanks, Carl and Kevin. Appreciate your
Thank you very much.
feedback and helping.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last item that, and ironic with what just happened nationally. So we had a camera project in CIP through a grant, and the grant never came through. So the hall school cameras have been done, but the center school cameras have not been done. And so I asked for a quote. You want to use the same system, the system that's been installed at Hall is a professional system. We have access to it. It's web-based, so we can access it, in certain places. So this is the same, this would be the same system. And it would put the new camera system in place at center. Right now, center's cameras, they're like the eBay special. There's a couple that are halfway decent. The ones that are on the fob system at the doors are new. Those would not be replaced with this. Those are good. But the ones like exterior and hallway are, some of them record, some of them don't. You can't zoom or anything like that. They're not great. So they provided a quote for this. This would be and it says Hall Memorial VM server. We actually, when we put the system into Hall, we built it so that we could expand it. And so the server would still live at Hall, but it would put the cameras at center. So this would be $32,599. You do have a license for these cameras. They've got the specific domes. Some of these are tilt cameras, and the exterior cameras, some of them with the bullet cameras are a little bit closer. You can see a little bit better. I don't want to get into, it says where these would be. It doesn't say where all of the remainder of the cameras would be. I don't want to show that. So this is the other proposal. And again, because we've already used this vendor and we're just, you'd be expanding this project, you would, and this is one dealer. If we were going to go to another dealer, you'd have to go to Pennsylvania. This is a local vendor, somebody that, when we have a problem with our cameras, we can get them. So I would propose you complete this project as well.
And this is installed?
Yes, this includes install. And what's hard, it's not the cost of the cameras, to be honest with you. It's the running of cables down hallways. And when you have fire breaks and things, you have to make sure you are not, doing any damage to the fire breaks. So that's the installation is the majority of the cost. The cameras, you start talking about some of these are $300-400 cameras. Some are up to $1,000. But you start looking at the installation as the main cost of this project. And right now, the way they're done, it was done homegrown. There are so many splits in ceiling right now. If a camera fails, to be able to find where the issue is near impossible. We would spend a huge amount of money trying to find where the issue is because they're basically fused together. It's just not done professionally.
How much was it to put the system in at Hall?
It's about the same. It was about the same. It's about the same number of cameras. Hall school, and let me just tell you, this doesn't maximize our capacity. This is a good system. in both buildings, but it's not like every square foot is done. This actually, center school is a little bit easier because it has a lot of straight hallways, whereas the nooks and crannies and turns at Hall is a little bit more. I think in the long term, they'll probably look for more cameras at Hall. However, these would provide really good coverage for the spaces we have. I think Donna, it was the initial was 28, but I don't remember if the 28 was part of because there was an initial grant that was received. I can't remember if that was pre-grant or not. But
Certainly makes
ISG is
sense
the
to me, and it absolutely has to be the same system, so.
Right.
We already did some diligence on them when we picked them for the other
We did.
project. So
Yep.
I'm not concerned that this is just, this is like an add-on to an existing program.
correct, and it also ties into like the key fob system that we have and the cameras that are at the doors. It ties into all of that.
How fast could they get it up?
I don't know that yet. It depends on, they have some versions of cameras and some are faster, kind of like our wireless system. Some of these chips for some of these electronic things are an issue, and that could be the case for the laptops as well. We'll see. That's why I want to move on these things as quickly as we can if we're gonna do it.
Okay.
So where on it does it say it includes all the labor?
It's in the check boxes.
It's
Keep
also
moving.
lower down where it says the 50% for the installation of the system described in the schedule of protection above, half of which is available when you sign and half when you complete the installation.
Right, I
think that's the,
so when they say for the installation of the system, so that's implying that includes not
It
only
is.
all the things listed, but
Right.
that, okay, because it just says,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I asked too at first.
And this is the exact contract that we use with them. They've been reliable.
Okay.
Very reliable.
Right.
Anything else, Donna or Michelle?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I'll make sure these are on for the full board proposal. And I'll probably not share the contracts. I'll just give a snapshot on each of these and you can weigh in and
Yep.
share that we had some diligence looking at these. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to have the computer
One up.
up.
Yep, I can do that.
I can understand this, Michelle was right that the way they set up the cybersecurity invoice was confusing.
Yeah.
And that way,
Yeah, that's their typical monthly. I agree. I said the same thing before it came, before I shared it with you.
or they could have, they can figure it out. They're big boys.
We have the total. What I wanted was the total. What's going to get us to this point? So we're prepared for cyber insurance. What's the total? What's an annual cost and what's a one-time and done? So
I
that's,
think you're
and I
right,
have
though,
those
Donna,
numbers.
the showing the one for the actual laptops, people know, oh, I'm getting a
Yeah.
status disk drive and not a,
i3 or i7. Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry,
and
solid state.
yeah, and well, and to see the 3-year warranty
Mhm.
and those kind of things, I think it's important for people to know that it's in there.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Okay, I will
Okay.
definitely share that at the board meeting.
Okay,
All right,
then
if
we're
we're good, then all right, 5:09, we'll adjourn at 5:09. Thanks, all. Have a great night.
Okay,
You
thanks
too.
all. Bye.
Right, bye-bye.